In the previous video we looked at installing Raspbian on our new Raspberry Pi. If you've never used any sort of Linux before, you'll probably be at a loss as to what to do next. And so through the course of this video I hope to show you some of the very basic commands in Linux, as well as some of the ones specific to Raspbian. So in the previous video we looked at the config screen. This can be accessed by typing raspi-config and pressing enter, which must have sudo at the start of it. This is exactly the same as the screen we went through in the previous video, and you can change any settings you wish in here. Some of the changes will require a reset of the Raspberry Pi, while others won't. If we exit this config, you can see that the screen just adds the cursor to the bottom of the screen with a line so that we can input it again. One of the key combinations that we talked about previously was Ctrl L. Ctrl L is the same as typing clear, in that it just resets the screen so that there's no text showing other than the request for input. When it comes to working with files, the first thing that we're going to want to do is see what files are available to us. We can use the ls command to do this, which is short for list. This lists all of the files which are in the current directory. By default, you start off in a directory specific to your user. This is the equivalent of the My Documents folder on Windows. As you can see, by default we do have a couple of files available to us, just from the basic Raspbian install. The ls command isn't restricted to just showing the 4 files which we can see at the moment, however. There are a whole host of configurable options. So the one which most people tend to use, in my experience at least, is ls-la. This displays all of the files within the folder, whether they're hidden or not, or whether they're files or not. So if we execute this command, we can see that there are a whole host of other files in here as well, not just the 4 files that we could originally see. If you want to see what options are available to you when you're creating your commands, you can type man ls. Man stands for manual, and the command after it is the commands that you're going to look at the manual for. So if we execute this, it will show us the manual for this command. As you can see, A in this case stands for all, and if you just hit enter, we can see that L uses the long listing format. And we can carry on. There are a whole host of options available to us. So you can customize the output exactly to your exact specifications. If you press the Q button, it will return you to the command line. And again, you can either press clear or Ctrl L to reset your screen. So at the moment we can use the ls commands to see which files are in our folders. But how do we know what our directory structure actually looks like? Well, in Linux, there is only one directory structure. If you have multiple hard drives within Microsoft Windows, for example, they all show as separate drives within my computer. So you can have a C drive and a D drive, etc., etc. Within Linux, there's only one directory tree. Everything is under the root directory, which is represented by a slash. If we type ls now, we can see that we've changed directory, which is what CD stands for, and we now have a whole host of other folders available to us. You can also see that these are in different colours as well. In this case, blue represents folders, while the OCR-Pi PNG file in our original directory is in pink, which represents an actual file. So we can use CD to change directory to any directory that we know about. So we can type cd slash, sorry, that should be cd space slash, and then if we hit tab, we are able to see all of the options that we're able to change directory into. So we can change directory into the user folder, specifically the user for Pi. So if we press Ctrl L to clear now, we can change directory into anywhere that we want. So we can change directory into the user folder. If we list all of the folders again, we can see that we have different folders available to us. It's also possible to go backwards up just one folder. So cd --dash returns us to the root folder, because the root folder is the folder above this user folder, with double dot representing the folder above this current folder. If we're ever lost, we can type pwd. Pwd will echo out the current working directory, or present working directory. So if we just type cd without anything after it, it will take us back to our home directory. If we type ls, we can see that these are the files which were originally in our home directory. And we can type pwd, and this will show us that this is our home/pi folder. So now that we're able to change directories, we can begin to look at creating new directories. Creating directories is done by typing mkdir space and then the name of the folder that we want to create. So in this example we can call it test folder. If we type ls again, we can see that the test folder is now created, and we can change directory into that test folder that we've just created. You'll notice that I've just pressed tab, which is just auto-completed. You can almost auto-complete every single file or folder if it's in the correct place in a command. So you could type cd test tab and it will put the underscore folder into the sentence for you. We've not obviously got any files within this folder yet, but we can create one very quickly. To create an empty file, we simply need to type touch and then the file name. So if we show the current directory now, we can see that we have our file name available to us. If we decide that we want this file to be a text file, we can open it with a text editor. One of the more basic text editors is called Nano. And to open the file in Nano, all we have to do is type nano space and then the file name. This is our text editor, so we can add text now. So some text. And you can see at the bottom of the screen we have these options. You will notice, however, that there isn't a save option. If you press Ctrl X, which is what the up arrow X indicates for exit, we will be asked if we want to save our changes. So press Y, and it will ask us to select the file name. We don't want to change the file name, and so we just hit enter. We can see that our file is still in our directory. So if we open it again with Nano, we can see that our changes are obviously still going to be there. And so we can exit back out of that. So what if we want to move our files around? Well, the command to move files is mv. So we want to move our file name, and we want to put it in the directory immediately above this one. So in the same folder as our PNG file that we looked at earlier. And we can do that just by typing --, which indicates the folder above the current one. If we list our files again now, we can see that there's nothing in this folder. If we go back up, however, and list our files again, we can see that our file name is now here. Now what if we wanted to rename our file name to something different? Well, there isn't really a rename function within Linux. There is, however, a move function. mv stands for move, and if we want to rename a file, we simply need to type the file's original name and then the file name that we want it to be. So in this case we're going to change the file called file name to file name1. and as you can see, it has changed its name in our structure. After working on our file name, we may decide that we no longer want to access it. We can delete it essentially. And so we have the remove command available to us for this, which is rm, and then the file name that we want to delete, which is now file name 1. So if we execute this command now and then list our files again, we can see that the file has disappeared. We may also decide that we no longer want our test folder, and so we can use the rm dir command, remove directory, to delete our test folder, which has now been deleted. Because there are so many commands which we can use, we also have a history command. The history command literally prints out every single command that's been typed into the console, whether it's in this session or any other session. But you can see here the history of the actions that we've taken in this video. If you decide that the command line isn't to your liking, there is actually an interface similar to what you would find in Windows, which can be accessed by typing Start X and hitting enter. In this case, the interface is very zoomed in, because I don't use it very often, so I don't bother setting this up properly. But you do have access to, for example, internet browsers, one of which is Midori. But as you can see, this is a fully fledged web browser, and you can use it as such. If you use the Pi Store, there are also a whole host of options available to you as far as additional software goes. And because of the educational nature of the Raspberry Pi, you will find that there is a whole host of information and different applications that are available to you, many of which are free. If you decide that the command line isn't for you, you can of course exit back out, and logging out will take you back to the terminal. In the next video, we're going to be looking at basic commands to find your IP address. This will allow us to begin the process of actually connecting to our Raspberry Pi via SSH and via a VNC, so that we can access it from a different computer. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out.